Michelle, good morning.
Good morning, Melissa.
It is a pleasure to be here with you today.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be here speaking with you. This is great. This is very amazing.
So we started this journey when? Was it in January of 2025?
Yeah. Was it January or was it in December you called me?
No, it was in January.
It's January?
It was in
Yeah.
January.
Yes.
Because that's when everything, it was in January. It was at the end of January, actually. Mm-hmm. So at some point between 2022 and 2024, you sent me a message on LinkedIn.
Yes.
And you invited me to your studio for a studio visit. And what you probably didn't know is that I'd already seen your studio some years prior. You were somewhere in, is it Deerfield Beach? No, it's not Deerfield Beach.
Delray Beach.
In Delray Beach.
Yes.
It was this really beautiful storefront. I was looking for parking because there's a nice little strip where they have all these restaurants, and I was looking for parking. And as I was circling around, I saw Michelle Drummond, and I was like, oh, there's her studio. So I drove by. I think I kind of like slowed down and looked inside. So I was familiar. It wasn't a studio visit, but I was familiar with your work. And then we set up a date, and I missed that date. Mm-hmm. And it was just one of those things that I didn't put this on my calendar. And I think not too long after that, I started to really utilize my calendar and making sure that the alerts were on, that I had something to do, right? And I felt really bad. I was a little embarrassed. And I figured you didn't want to speak to me again, which is why I never reached out to you after that. Just so, because I know how that is, that you took your time probably to be there and I didn't show. So fast forward, I go to Prism Art Fair, and who do I see? Michelle Drummond's work, and I was so excited, and I was like, oh good, she must have reached out to Mikhail too. Mm-hmm. So this all worked out, and I was really proud of you because that year Prism was absolutely beautiful, a beautiful space. Mm-hmm. It was in a great location. So I just thought, oh, this is going to be a lot of opportunity for her. This is going to turn out really well. And then January rolls around. I did a proposal, which I actually will have nothing to do with. I actually passed off an exhibition opportunity to a different curator, different set of artists that at the last minute couldn't participate. And then that left a hole, and we were like, oh my God, who we want to call on? And then I remembered Michelle. She just showed at Prism, which means that her work is fresh in people's mind. Let's see what's going on. This time I made it to that studio visit.
Yes, you did.
And we had a lovely time. You're in a lovely area of the world, a really kind of up and coming studio space for a lot of creatives. Mm-hmm. And we had a good time talking not only about the work, but talking about you and your life. So I want to talk about the work, all the pieces that we're looking at and the pieces that we have behind us. So let's start off with the exhibition. Tell us about The Flow of Water.
So The Flow of Water was inspired by lived experience. There are pieces in the exhibition that I started working on years ago, and everything just came, just flowed and fell into place. And, just thinking back, it's inspired by my being sent to the country. And when I say country, I mean deep rural Jamaica, from growing up in Kingston and being sent to the country by my father. That's where he grew up. It was like a culture shock because Kingston is a city, you have the light, you have running water in household, and then where we were sent, and when I said we, my sister and I, and my father was really a single parent, was no electricity, no running water. You pretty much had to fetch your water or from a spring or depend on rainwater. The gutters on the house, the drum filled with rainwater whenever it rained. And I was experiencing this for up to even when I was 10 years old. So for years I was experiencing it. And throughout the years, I would go back and visit I became an adult, and it's the same condition. You see the evolution of the houses. They got bigger, people got a little bit more sophisticated, but the access to water and the plumbing system did not change. It was the same, really lived experience, depending on a truck, by purchasing water from a truck, or also still depending on rainwater. And my father, really, he was in construction, so he built his own cistern, which is also a dependency on rainwater.
Okay.
But, the thought came to me was, okay, you're depending on rainwater, but is this water safe for drinking?
Right.
Is it being treated? And I often wonder how we didn't get sick. Our immune system must have been really strong because we were, consuming that water. Right. So, that's really spurred my thought process about bringing awareness to this essential resource. And, it is a means of survival. Mm-hmm. And I started creating pieces that reference domestic tools and conduits to access the safe water, and even tools that we use and fetch the water from a spring. Mm-hmm. And it's really to create some visibility around this issue. And it's not just specifically to rural communities, but it's all, and in Jamaica, but it's universal. Right. So I wanted to bring a universal awareness to this issue. Right. And try in the hopes of making an impact, and creating change to the system.
I was listening to a podcast, which Club Shay Shay, which has become very popular for good reasons and sometimes not so positive reasons. And I remember Shannon Sharp talking about, so Shannon Sharp is probably in his 50s. I think he's in his late 50s. Mm-hmm. And the entire time that he grew up, they didn't have a shower. He showered outside. He still had an outhouse. He didn't experience having his own bathroom in a place that he lived mm-hmm. until I think maybe after college or while he was in college, because he didn't have access to that. And he was also in rural Georgia. But that's in the United States. And we, kind of make the assumption that, at some point in the 20th century, you had at least an indoor bathroom and some type of indoor plumbing, whether you had water that came from a municipality or if you had well water. But there was something kind of automatic that was a part of that. But yet and still, there was still parts of the US mm-hmm. that still had those same issues. So this work talks about your childhood and what it was like growing up without access with water. How did that shape your upbringing after, you were able to, go back to Kingston to be with your father, but then eventually go off to university and study and, live in the United States?
So as a child, and going through the system, society really influences what path you take. Okay. And I grew up in very humble, circumstances, and education, from my perspective, was what was going to give you that opportunity to raise or be elevated to a different level and to be respected. Mm-hmm. So I chose the path of academia because that was what was actually going to elevate me into that status of being respected and be able to help my family. Mm-hmm. I went to a prominent high school based on my grades, St. Lawrence University. Not St. Lawrence, St. Andrew High School for girls. So it's an all-girls school. That was where I was introduced to field hockey. Okay. While at St. Andrew High School, I took the path of the natural sciences because I wanted to be a chemical engineer. Okay. That I thought would gain me some respect, and status in Jamaica, pursuing that avenue. Okay. through field hockey, I excelled at field hockey as well. So I was excelling in academia and I was excelling in athletics.
Okay.
And the combination of both got me into a university at St. Lawrence University, upstate New York.
Okay.
And from there, I was still thinking, I still need to pursue academia and become a respected professional.
Right.
So I took on mathematics.
Okay.
So I was pursuing a degree in math, computer science combination, and also French. But there was this void, there was something missing. I was introduced to art in high school,
Okay.
but I did not follow that path because in the forefront of my mind, I knew society would not accept, even my family would be like, what are you going to do with that? Art can't make you money. Mm-hmm. So I took the path of, being the technical aspect, engineering that could actually allow me a respectable profession. But in college, I was still yearning to pursue that aspect. So I was trying to fulfill both. So what I did, I elected to complete all my core courses that will fulfill that technical, the math, computer science degree. Mm-hmm. And for my senior year, I decided to do an entire year of art classes.
Okay.
So it was all art, just tapping in, just, kind of investigating different aspects of art and filling that void. So I left college with a degree in mathematics, concentration in computer science and French, and I went on to pursue my postgrad degree in project management, which would really provide that avenue for me to have a corporate career.
Okay.
But in the process of that corporate career, I was still creating art.
Okay.
Art was an outlet for me.
Okay.
It was therapy, and it was me filling that void, continue to fill that void, but also pleasing society from a technical perspective and being a career professional. So that's how that path transitioned to.
How did you know that art was what you needed to fill the void? Because it could have been anything. It could have been dance. It could have been roller skating. It could have been cooking.
It's because in college, I had a class, probably a math class or a computer science class that I had to pass the art studio, pass the creative department to go to for a semester.
Okay.
And every time I walked by the arts department, I would be staring in and I would be walking and I would be like, oh my God, I need to do this. I need to do this. But I was actually rejecting that side of me for a while.
Okay.
And then you know what? I went abroad to study abroad French. I went to France. I was exposed to different culinary, cultural aspect, architecture. And then I came back. I said, you know what? I need to stop fighting this. I fulfill the core courses, to get my degree.
Right.
Let me actually pursue what I want to pursue and give in to that urge. Okay. And really see if this is what I really want to do. Okay. So that's, I don't know how to explain it, but it's that urge, that yearn, that you need, that itch that you need to scratch. Right. And you're walking by and you're fighting it, but you can't fight it anymore. Right. And that's how I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And when I did that first class and I was just in the studio, I was among the materials, I was hearing the teacher talk, I was seeing. Yes. I was like, yeah, I'm in the right place. Okay. I'm in the right place. So with all the classes that you took, it seems like textile really stuck with you. Tell us about how we got
to this place with the materials that you use now?
So I used to talk about, okay, yeah, I was doing a sculpting class and I was given a linear task project to create a sculpture. And, we had artisans who came around and they were selling these beautiful artwork made from strings and nails.
Okay.
And that's the story I used to tell.
Okay.
And I think when you came to my studio for that studio visit, I was like, you know what? That's not where this all began. This all began in a macrame class in high school. Okay. We had a lot of East Indians, directly from India. They would come to Jamaica on contract or just really they're immigrants, and they would teach us in my high school. Okay. And we were privileged to have art and craft because our high school made us well-rounded. We used to do clothing and textile, arts and craft, all the great stuff. And one of my craft classes, I had an Indian teacher, and she taught us macrame. She taught us how to weave, the different knots, all of that. And when I really dug into my memory and, explaining this to you, I remember that was where that started. Okay. It wasn't the artisans that influenced it, but it started in craft class learning macrame, out of macrame. Okay. So that I really emulated and transferred that knowledge into creating. So that's what influenced my work. It's high school, learning macrame, in an art class. But I must say that my earlier works were more two-dimensional, on canvas, on wood. And then I really started pushing the boundaries of the material itself and incorporating a lot of my technical skills that I learned in physics, math, chemistry, those aspects into challenging and defying gravity. So you see the sculptural aspect with these pieces now really coming off more of a higher relief work, sculptural work.
When in your practice did you make that switch to push yourself to the next level? Because you mentioned that you were working on wood before. So I've only known these works made of textile and yarn. When did you make that switch?
I made that switch when I moved to South Florida from the DC area in 2018. Okay. I started really immersing myself in the creative world. I started visiting museums, galleries, even going to the Art Basel. And I saw the quality of work and the level of work. And I said, wow, I need to step my game up. Yes. Because in order for me to really excel, I need to be unique. I need to come with something different. Okay. And that's when I really started pushing the boundaries of the material. I started, medium relief, just coming off the canvas. And then I was like, okay, and the reception was great. Right. And everybody was intrigued by how I manipulated the material with adhesive. Okay. And then from that, I started to experiment even more. Okay. And, I think it's that aspect of that technical side of me and the creative side coming together, where I was like, okay, let me experiment, see how I can defy gravity, and let me see how I can create some structure out of a usually malleable material. Right. And this is what really started intriguing the audience to say, okay, how does she do this? Right. But it's really a combination of the experience that I was trying to run away from, which is a technical, and then embracing the creative, but marrying both to, create something unique that will elevate my work and really provided a stance for me in the creative community.
You mentioned your background in math and natural sciences, project management. you didn't go and get an MFA or an MA in fine arts from any university. So where did the knowledge come from for the work that you do now? And who are the artists that inspired you as you move through this process of upgrading the work that you were already doing?
The knowledge, this is just, for me, it's natural instinct. It's organic.
Okay.
And I surprise myself
Okay.
as well, even just curating my work, the colors, the hues I use, how I apply and curate just the color concept for my work. It's really was a natural, organic, I would say God-given gift for me. My influence throughout the years of really diving into art and inspiration, there's I would say young artist, Joan Snyder. She is Dutch.
Okay.
I follow her.
Okay.
I know Edna Manley, she was original, one of the original true pioneer Jamaican artists, but I really wasn't in tune that much in art in Jamaica growing up, and I think it's, as I immerse myself creatively, I moved to Florida, I started really educating.
Okay.
Just from seeing and experiencing, observing. I like Bisa. I like how she uses textile. Similarly, instead of paint, she uses textile to create.
Right.
And it's someone once said I use yarn or textile or fiber as paint on my sculptures.
Right.
So it's kind of the same concept, but a different technique. So to me, Yinka, Shonibari, he amazing.
Yes.
The color, the hues, somewhat similar, but different. I'm from Jamaica, so I have more of that Caribbean hue.
Right.
Too. And that's based on, and it's inspired by, my work is also about optimism.
Okay.
There's a lot of whimsy to my work because, what I would like my work to evoke in individuals who encounter it is, there's hope. There's light at the end of the tunnel. I have been through a lot, but I also want to bring awareness to issues that affect human survival.
Right.
So it's about engaging, pulling in the audience, and then talking about the work and what inspires them. But to be, just to summarize, my work itself, it's really a natural instinct as to how I create. And I think it's just my brain working of combining that technical and that creative aspect. And my just curiosity to push boundaries and experiment on a medium that people would not even think about how I can use it in that respect.
I'm starting to see a lot of influencers encourage others to create social media content. And there was one gentleman that I saw, matter of fact, just this morning, and he said, so to change his life, he had to tell himself, even though I have a 9-to-5, how would an influencer live? These are the things that they would do every day. So what is every day for Michelle? You have instinct to create the work that you do. So how do you put that instinct to work on a daily basis to create?
So I, coming from a corporate environment, I approach the creative side, the art as a business. So my background, project management, I spent years in the project management industry. So I apply a lot of that technique, project management techniques and methodology to how I create and operate my art business. So I get up every morning. I go to the studio, and sometimes I have some coffee. I sit, and my studio is my sanctuary. It's a space where, you have a mental getaway. But what I actually focus on is presentation, branding, and really being aware of work that's out there, and being aware of how you position yourself and how you create and how you actually present your work, what makes you different. And it's a constant experimenting. It's a constant, how do I present my work? How do I challenge myself? And how do I market my work? So I'm wearing all these different hats. I just don't create and expect things to happen. I have to make things happen.
Right.
I have to reach out to an individual. I have to reach out to you, Melissa. I see, I do my research to see who is out there, who's doing what's your focus, how can I collaborate with a specific individual to get to a certain level.
Right.
And that's how, from a creative perspective, from a business perspective, I position myself. I apply my business acumen to my creative business.
Right.
Creating, and I'm just going to be honest with you and just be raw. I'm a Black female.
Right.
In this creative industry.
Yes.
I don't have the MFAs, I don't have the BFAs. This is natural, God-given skills and talent that I'm creating and experimenting. So I know when I come to the table and I present my work, I can't be mediocre about how I present myself and present my work. I have to be better than.
Right.
So each piece I create, you would say I'm anal, I'm meticulous, but it's for a reason.
Right.
Because you are going to be assessed, you're going to be judged even more at a higher level than others out there.
I want to interrupt just to ask that question, because that's something that, and I'll kind of go off script a little bit, but that's something that people of color, but especially Black folk, deal with. I know that we want to live in a time where we say, this is not the 1950s, things have changed. Survey says that is incorrect. Turn on the news. We kind of inching back, where we shouldn't inch back, right? We had a conversation off to the side about, some of our lived experiences in this industry and in this region. How do you deal with the stress of having to be the best in the room only for that best, like to walk in with 20 points knocked off your score already, right? We come in at 100, but once they see who we are and what we're about, automatic 20 points gone, 30 points gone. Everything starts all over again. Sometimes we get used to it, other times it can be devastating. How do you deal with it?
I never get used to it. And my approach in an environment like this is you always have to be about 10 steps ahead to say, okay, what if this happens?
Right.
And there's always, okay, what's the contingency? And this is where my project management comes in. You always have a contingency plan. Okay, what's the workaround?
Right.
And find different avenues to get to where you want to go. So there's a lot of, throughout my, I would say, short, experience, I've done a lot of workarounds. And I have to look at creative ways of advancing.
Right.
And that's a constant. It gets tiresome, but you can't really give up.
Right.
It's funny that I was going through Instagram yesterday and I saw some quotes from Tina Turner.
Yes.
And, one of the quotes is Tina's like, I've had a hard life, and it is a journey, but it's how you deal with it
Right.
and how you stay the course
Right.
to get to where you want to go.
Right.
And, it is a lot of work, but, I know where I want to go. And I know sometimes it's a challenge to really figure out what the workaround is. But if you stay the course and be true to who you are and keep delivering
Right.
at the level that you know how to deliver, a lot of times, as much as you have the naysayers or the persons who are or individuals trying to keep you down, I always say my work speaks for itself.
Yes.
So it doesn't matter what I look like, what you want to say. When someone sees my work, that alone will elevate me to the next level.
I love that. So speaking of, you've talked about having a very corporate approach to structuring your days to create work. What is the new work that we can expect? What are you thinking about? What do you want to manifest into reality?
So the flow of water is about restrictions. It explores the environmental and societal impact of water on underserved and rural communities in terms of access, safe quality for consumption. And that's limitations.
Right.
So On Cage now is like kind of a spin-off from the flow of water.
Okay.
And On Cage, it explores what the impact of the word or the perception of the word from, I would say, varied background societies. So my approach to that was contact about 20 individuals from different backgrounds, gender, ethnicity, whatever, and just to see what the first thing that comes to mind
Okay.
when they see that word.
Okay.
And from their responses, I create based on my interpretation. And a lot of the responses, freedom, on restrictions, liberation, that aspect. Some of them more philosophical. Are you really free when you say you're free, especially in certain environments, certain society? So I'm creating based on feedback that I get from a consensus,
Okay.
and putting my own interpretation to the responses. So that's, I have about 8 or so pieces in the series so far.
Good.
And I'm still creating, and it's evolving as I go along. Just kind of tying different perspectives of that word into manifesting that into something that's tangible. And it may be my interpretation when someone encounters my work, may be a different interpretation, someone's else's interpretation, because it evokes different meaning to that individual. So in general, I create work that, yes, it's my interpretation when I create it, but it's open to others'
Right.
interpretation, which is, actually a lot more fulfilling to me when I hear them speak of how the work affects them.
There's a few things that I really love, and I know that we've talked about this before. I didn't know that you were a French minor in college.
Yes.
I find it so interesting that you have manifested so much from your childhood to now. We're not going to talk about why French is going to be important, but the fact that you were a French minor, the fact that you took your childhood and things in your childhood that really bothered you, and you created something that talked about that time, but also ways to not just bring awareness to an issue that affects a lot of people, like within the interior of the country, but find ways to correct those injustices, right? And that your work has done all of that. You truly conjured and created a life that you wanted. And that's one of the things that I love about creativity. It doesn't matter if you're into science, it doesn't matter if you are into tech, it doesn't matter, what you do on a daily basis, that creative thinking that's in your inner world will come out in your outer world. And I love how that has manifested for you.
You know, I'm surprised as well because, you know, I always tell people this was never planned.
Yeah.
But I think in my subconsciousness, it was planned and it just came to fruition. And
Yes.
and it's not just, it just came to fruition, but I put in the work for
Yes.
it to actually come to fruition.
Yes.
And I think as a child, I always knew I didn't belong in certain circumstances, you know, situations and certain environments. And I always said it. I said, I don't belong here. I belong, you know, in a broader setting. I'm supposed to be somewhere else. I'm supposed to be doing, I have a purpose.
Right.
So I recognized as a child, from a child, that I had a purpose.
Right.
And then one of those was to help my family.
Yes.
And I was driven, that was my driving force to help my family. But in the process of doing that, it's really, if you think about it, helping my family, really translated into helping others as well. And how I live my life to help others and touching. So it is a surprise to me where I am in certain respect, but not so much of a surprise because I pretty much knew where I wanted to be and what I wanted to do from an early age. Creating art, being an artist, that's a surprise. No one would have thought you'd be here because of how I grew up in society and what the thought of being an artist is. But I think it's more of the effect of my work that is more respected.
Okay.
And that is why I create. I create not to just beautify, but to use my work as a tool to bring awareness. And I think that's what's making it so successful, you know, and, you know, filling my cup.
I love that. Michelle, thank you for your time. This has been a dream collaboration. I've curated before, but I consider this my very first real curatorial project because this exhibition really, everything that I could have wanted, you know, working with 10 North Arts, first of all, has been a dream. I've been a board member for a long time, but the fact that they gave me this opportunity was a really big deal. I'm really thankful to them and for the staff helping put this together, for your work, the fantastic opening, the performance by Arsemer McCoy. This was everything that I could have wanted. Thank you for being a part of this. I look forward to many more collaborations in the future. And we have such exciting things coming up. I wish I could talk about it, but I will not, darling. I will not. We'll talk about that later, darling.
Yeah, you know, I just wanted to say, no, thank you. You know, as part of Everything Happens for a Reason, everyone enters someone's life for a reason.
Yes.
And I think, you know, our connection started how many years ago, but we were meant to connect, we were meant to collaborate, we were meant to bring this exhibition here.
Yes.
And it's amazing that it's this space and with 10 North Group because of what 10 North Group stands for and what their goal and mission is about.
Yes.
You know, just bringing access, uplifting, changing lives. And it ties to what my exhibition and what the purpose of my creating is about. So everything is just coming together, and I appreciate you believing in what I do and, you know, having me in this space as well.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being with Sugarcane Magazine.